Welcome back to Home Gym Hacks and Reviews. Today I'm going to show 5 belt squat hacks that can be used in place of having a belt squat machine. Stay tuned. While the Rogue Rhino is not my most versatile piece of equipment, that award would either go to the PowerTech Lever Gym or the Iron Master IM2000. It is my favorite because it's the most overbuilt piece of equipment I have. It's made in the USA, and it allows me to squat a lot heavier and a lot closer to failure than I feel comfortable doing with any bar. I find the Rhino to be such a simple yet amazing piece of equipment. First, I can engage the weight and disengage the weight from a standing position. Also, I don't need to hold an Olympic bar on my shoulders, which can stress the shoulder joint. On the rare occasion that I place a bar on my back, I use the Titan Fitness Safety Squat Bar and perform Hatfield squats with the 12-11 wedges. I like the belt squat because it reduces load on the spine, and when the line of drive is vertical, it greatly reduces shear forces. For the longest time, I wanted this machine, but it is very expensive, and I didn't have the space for it. So I came up with a few belt squat hacks that I could do inexpensively and with little equipment. If you try to do any of these, do so at your own risk. For all these belt squat hacks, I will be using the Rogue Multi-Belt, which sells for $95. It has 5 adjustment lengths from 44 inches to 60 inches, and I think it's very comfortable, even though it rides up on me from time to time. For almost all of these hacks, it will be necessary to connect the belt as close to the hips as possible. And prior to having the Rogue belt, I used the Spudding belt squat belt, which I got off of Amazon for $75. Spudding now has an adjustable belt squat belt for $129. I performed this hack for a number of months, and while it has its limitations, this is my second favorite belt squat hack in this video. The setup for the first belt squat hack is simply running bands from one side of the power rack to the other with a large carabiner in the middle. It is extremely important the rack is weighed down with plates or bolted into the ground. I stack 5 3/4 7-inch stall mats, 4 3 3/4 inches of additional height, and I add the 12-11 wedges. I use the flip down safety to hold on. I have a nice selection of strength bands from Elite FTS and Power Systems. To connect to the bands, I use an additional carabiner and connect as closely to my hips as possible. If there are a lot of bands or thick bands, it can become difficult to get into position, but I could rig something up to take the bands from a standing position. The bands are relatively inexpensive and easy to set up. However, it is difficult to determine the exact resistance. For example, I know the Red Mini ranges from 25 to 53 pounds of tension, but I have to measure the length of the band when under tension to determine the resistance. Also, over time the bands lose some of their elasticity and they will eventually tear and split. The line of drive is vertical, so shear forces are reduced and there is no axial loading. I have seen some very good belt squats on some of the DIY channels, but many of those require some degree of construction, which is more involved than anything I want to present in this video. This setup also works great for marches, which I will do with the bands or on the Rhino if I tweak my back, and it works great for lunges and calf raises using the Iron Master calf block. Of all the belt squat hacks in this video, my least favorite is using the lower pulley for belt squats. When I had very limited equipment, I performed this exercise for a number of months, and I had decent progress, but I never thought it was great. I don't recommend doing belt squats on a standalone lat machine. Instead, I think it's much more secure if the high-low pulley is attached to a Smith machine or a power rack. Always observe the cable system's max weight capacity, and when I do this on the Lever Gym, I stay well below 300 pounds, and I make sure to have plates on the plate storage posts. When I performed cable squats on the lower pulley, I went from a seated position, at first using a 5-gallon bucket. If I use the Lever Gym, I put plates on the posts, move the rollers out of the way, and move the arms out of the way. I used an additional band to hold the lever arms in place. From a seated position, I connect 2 carabiners together and grab an additional post I have in the range of motion selector. The line of drive is not as vertical as I like because the pulley is in front of me rather than under me. If you don't like going from a seated position, on most high-low pulleys, there is a way to have the weight engaged by the upper pulley. You then connect to the lower pulley while removing the resistance off of the upper cable. On the cable tower of my Smith machine, I use the bench as my seat to drive off, some stall mats for improved foot placement, and I hold on to the front plate of the machine. This feels very similar to squatting on the Lever Gym's lower cable, but this has a 500-pound weight capacity, whereas the Lever Gym has a 300-pound weight capacity. The IM2000's lower pulley can also be used for belt squats. And here I've attached the Angles 90 grips to the carabiner above my head to help get into a standing position. I will say I don't think any of these lower cable belt squats is a long-term replacement for having a belt squat machine. Way back when all I had was the PowerTech Smith machine as my only piece of equipment, I experimented with using it for belt squats. However, the bar travels at a 15-degree angle, so it wasn't that great for a quality belt squat. However, the IM2000's bar travels vertically, so it allows for a pretty decent belt squat. To perform belt squats on the IM2000 Smith bar, I use my 12-inch Titan Fitness plyo boxes, a daisy chain centered and wrapped around the bar, and an additional daisy chain wrapped around the upper frame with handles to help me stay upright. When there is a lot of weight on the Smith bar, it's difficult to spin it out of the safeties, but luckily the IM2000's bar has a bolt that gets turned to lock the bar into position so that it won't spin on you during the exercise. The line of drive is vertical and the exercise feels effective, but getting the bar back into position after a taxing set can be difficult, so I recommend this exercise for lighter weight, higher rep sets. This setup also works great for marches. This next belt squat hack is with the landmine and the Yes for All eyelet. I never did this exercise for any period of time, but if you're limited on equipment, it can certainly get you by. The IM2000's landmine connects on the back of the machine, which makes the setup great for putting the Olympic bar on the safety spotter arm. These safety spotter arms have a 250-pound weight capacity, which I stay below so I don't damage the slide rails, and I have the Yes for All eyelet, which can be used for a lot of exercises on the sleeve. With the bar on the safety spotter arm, I can connect to the eyelet from a standing position and walk over and start my squat from a standing position. The lip of the plate provides a great place to hold on, the line of drive is almost vertical, and it's easy to rack the weight when done with the set. 25-pound plates can be used for a more narrow stance. My favorite belt squat hack is with the loading pin and plyo boxes. I performed this exercise for a number of years with a lot of success. In fact, I was regularly going over 300 pounds with the loading pin. For the loading pin belt squat, I use a plate to space the plyo boxes. I put the loading pin on a platform that's just a little shorter than the plyo boxes, and I use the lever gem to brace my upper body. I don't recommend doing this exercise without holding onto the lever gem, a rack, or something similar. There are a couple of downsides to this setup. The first being that it's top-loaded, which is a bit of a pain to set up and later remove the weights. 2.5s can serve as spacers, making it easier to get the plates off when finished. However, the 2.5s take up valuable real estate. It's easy to connect the loading pin with a carabiner, and then lift and push away from the lever gem to get into position, and then it's easy to return the loading pin to the platform when done performing the exercise. I could load the pin heavier with 35s or 45s, but my stance would need to be wider, and as of late my joints feel better with a narrow stance. This Titan Fitness loading pin has a 300-pound weight capacity, and the loading pin has almost 11.5 inches of loadable space. The line of drive is vertical, and the exercise feels extremely effective. For many years, this was my primary compound leg exercise, and it always served me well. Thank you so much for watching. If you found anything in this video helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. You can find me on Instagram at Home Gym Hacks and Reviews. If any of my videos or reviews have helped you, please consider using one of my affiliate links at no additional cost to you. And remember, if your equipment lacks, I got the hacks. Take care, everyone.